Hello everyone and welcome to another episode. My name is Quinn Noble and today we're going to be taking a look at my game room in 2022. So sit back, relax, and let's jump into it. I started last year with a tour of my game room and it was my best performing video in my first year as a channel. I figured I would be crazy not to make one for 2022, and to be honest, that last game room did not last long. I had to move to another apartment and set up a new game room. I filmed a few videos in that room, including a let's play of Sega's Spider-Man the video game, as well as a brief history of Tecmo Bowl. Due to unforeseen circumstances, I was forced to move again, and unfortunately we will never get a tour of that room. However, I believe that everything happens for a reason, and that has brought me to my best game room yet. Let's pick up where we left off. If you saw my last game room tour, we ended with my holy grail item, which is this Marvel vs. Capcom arcade machine. It serves as a storage for my Rock Band drum set, and I have to say that I am lucky to have this bad boy in my game room. You see, my new apartment is on the second floor. With the help of my good buddy and bandmate Russ, we got it up the flight of stairs, but it was no easy task. Let's just say that I'm not looking forward to moving this thing again, and I definitely owe Russ a few more rounds of beer for his help. This arcade game is powered by a Sega Naomi, which is the arcade equivalent of the Sega Dreamcast. It has a cartridge slot where you can swap the game out. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is the only one I have at the moment, but I have looked into buying a couple online, including Virtua Tennis and Power Stone. Next to my lone arcade machine is a magazine rack with various strategy guides. It helps to have all the Marvel vs. Capcom moves readily available when I have buddies over to play. I always check the book sections in the thrift stores. I have found some really good guides by doing this. I found this glass case for free at a thrift shop. I didn't really need a glass case, but it is kind of the centerpiece to my game room. As of now, it houses some large system boxes as well as a ton of nostalgia from the 80s and 90s. Some of this stuff was gifted to me. Some of it I found thrifting. Some of it was featured in some of my earlier videos. And some of it even belonged to me as a child, like this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles mutant module.
Shredder and his henchmen have used it to drill into the underground gold vault. We're here. Can they just drive in and take whatever they want? Why not? Because Splinter and the Turtles are hovering nearby in their turtle copter.
Hey guys, something's afoot!
Shredder's getting away, but with the turtle copter's punching skids, he's a pushover. It's foot washing time!
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Vehicles and figures each sold separately from Playmates.
On top of the glass case, I have some autographs, including the late Jeremy Bullock, who originally played Boba Fett, and George Lowe, who played Space Ghost on Adult Swim. Above that are some Punch-Out portraits that I have painted. I would like to eventually get a whole set from Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. So far, I have painted Piston Honda, King Hippo, and Bald Bull. Is there a better boxing game out there? If there is, I don't want to know about it. Squirtle here is a rescue from one of my local Goodwills. I don't know if I have told you yet, but I am highly addicted to Pokemon Go. Feel free to add me if you are too. Next to my glass display case is my entertainment center. This is where I keep the majority of my systems. On top, you'll find a Bulbasaur, as well as some boxes to systems and accessories. I don't necessarily collect Funko Pops, however I do have a small collection. This is Bill Reiser and Lance Bean from the classic game Contra. Contra is a side-scrolling run and gun that I featured in my last video about the games that I played in 2021. Be sure to check that video out if you haven't yet. If you know me personally, then you know Ren and Stimpy was one of my favorite cartoons growing up. I once did a cosplay of Powdered Toast Man that won me first place in a 2017 Halloween costume contest at the Best Damn Bar in my town, or Paul's Poorhouse. I got to meet Ren and Stimpy's co-creator Bob Camp at DragonCon a few years back, and I also got to meet Billy West, who plays the voice of Stimson J. Cat, as well as the Red M&M, Doug Funny, and one of my favorite characters of all time, Philip J. Fry. Speaking of Philip J. Fry, I have always admired this fan art of him in a smoke jacket. The original one has the artist's initials AO. I'm not quite sure who the artist is. If you know, please let me know in the comments. I have seen multiple copies out there, and being the lemming that I am, I decided to paint one for my game room. There is a Futurama game, and one day I will own it. But it will have to be a day that I am swimming in money like Scrooge McDuck, because it goes for a pretty penny. If anyone is wondering what to get me for my birthday, Futurama Complete for the OG Xbox is at the top of my list. I'm sure you've seen dogs playing cards, but have you seen the animated Bad Boys playing cards? This painting was gifted to me by my friend Alberto. He goes by the name Life's Ink on Instagram and TikTok. Be sure to give him a follow as his art and content are only getting better. I'll leave his handles in the description. I just love the detail he uses with Bender and Rick cheating by passing cards through a portal. This piece fits perfectly in my game room. Thanks again, Alberto. There are plenty of cartoon-related video games, and I love to play them all. One I have played a lot in my day is The Simpsons Hit and Run for the Nintendo GameCube. This is basically Grand Theft Auto in Springfield, and what more could you ask for? Many Simpsons fans, myself included, believe this to be the best Simpsons game ever. What game room isn't complete without a shelf dedicated to Mario? This question mark block Magic 8 Ball was a gift from my mom. Let's ask it a question. Do you think we can get to 500 subscribers by the end of the year? Well, that was kind of open-ended. I keep my mini systems underneath my television. My mini collection includes the NES, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and the core graphics. I keep the majority of my systems behind these glass doors to display. They are not hooked up as I am not a fan of wires. They aren't in any particular order either, so let's start with the Sega Master System. Next to that is a pile of Wii's. Below I have the Sega Dreamcast and Sega Saturn, as well as the OG Nintendo and Super Nintendo. In the next case, I have the Sega Genesis Models 1 and 2, the Jungle Green Nintendo 64, and a Nintendo GameCube with the Game Boy player. The next shelf has two models of the PS1, the PlayStation 2, as well as the fat PlayStation 3. Below that is my TurboGrafx 16, original Xbox, and two versions of the Xbox 360. Above that I have some accessories like my PSVR, original boxed Game Boy, and the Power Glove, which is more for show. It hardly did what it was supposed to, but the commercials in between Saturday morning cartoons made us feel otherwise.
The Power Glove for your Nintendo Entertainment System. Now you and the games are one. Everything else is child's play.
Right now I have the Wii U hooked up to my main TV. I always like to have Mario Kart 8 ready for some multiplayer action. I keep all my Wii U games on this Wii rack I found at the Goodwill bins, so I spared no expense. It also makes perfect storage for my Rock Band Stratocaster. The Guitar Hero and Rock Band accessories are some of the hardest to find spare room for. I feel like this is why we come across so many at thrift shops and garage sales. The other side of this rack stores multiple Wiimotes, more than you will need, really. On this wall I have all of my handheld systems on display. I have the Super Mario Bros. Game & Watch, Game Boy Color, the OG Game Boy, Nintendo DS and 3DS, the PSP, the PS Vita, Sega Game Gear, and this Tiger Electronics Home Alone 2 LCD game. I had a few of these growing up, and I was mighty surprised to find this relic from 1992 floating around in the bottom of the Goodwill bins. What a score, and the fact that it still works was just the icing on the cake. Over here I have my collection of Game Boy games. This rack I am using is actually a nail polish holder that I ordered off of Amazon. It will hold about 30 games and makes for a very nice display. I did end up adding a few games to my Game Boy collection this year, including Gargoyle's Quest. This game is sentimental to me because it was one of the few games I had when I was younger. The game is a spin-off of the Ghosts and Goblins series where you play as the villain gargoyle Firebrand. Ironically, I played this game before I even knew what Ghosts and Goblins was. As you can see, I am playing this on the Super Game Boy, which is such an underrated accessory. They even made some games for it, like Donkey Kong here, that was made especially for the Super Game Boy. My mom found this in her thrifting adventures and picked it up for me. As you can tell, the normal background is replaced by a DK arcade machine. The classic game is here, as well as several new levels made just for this Super Game Boy experience. Here's a cool game room hack. I found this clear over-the-door shoe organizer at Walmart for about $5. Instead of using it for shoes, I use it to store all of my controllers. As you can see, they are the perfect size for most control pads. There are even larger pockets on the bottom to house bulky controllers for consoles like Nintendo 64 or the Sega Dreamcast. You will find a lot of Star Wars memorabilia in my game room, and for good reason. Star Wars is one of my favorite movie franchises of all time. I have been watching the series my whole life. The films are some of my earliest memories, and I still have some of the Kenner action figures from when I was a kiddo. There are so many Star Wars games out there, it seems like I have one for every system. You've got your side scrollers, pod racers, online multiplayer battlegrounds, and even some pinball. Isn't that right, R2? My love for the film has opened doors in my life that I never thought possible. My good buddy Lance has a movie-quality Boba Fett costume. His attendance was requested by comedic rapper MC Chris for a concert at a venue called Big Daddy's. We got to party with MC Chris and there were stormtroopers dancing on the bar. It was an epic night. This led me to making my own Star Wars costumes like Savage Opress and even a Tusken Raider, although I had some help with that one. I got to party with Star Wars fan and comedian Brian Posehn, who later got cast and killed off in the first episode of The Mandalorian. I even got to sit in on a convention panel with Peter Mayhew, who originally played Chewbacca. He told stories of being on the set of the original Star Wars trilogy. Sadly, he passed away in 2019. Star Wars is one of my favorite movie franchises, but my favorite video game franchise has to be the Blue Bomber himself, Mega Man. You will find lots of Mega Man merchandise spread across my game room and my apartment for that matter. He appears in my refrigerator magnet collection, my pin collection, even my sock collection. I have some Mega Man pop vinyls, a Pez dispenser, and even a Mega Man cereal made by Funko. Mega Man artwork is displayed all over my game room walls, including some fun perler bead art, colored vinyl from the band Bit Brigade, and this shadow box art from Pixel Frames that really breathes some life into my game room. Mega Man is one of the first series I ever got into, as it reigned supreme on the first console I ever owned, the Nintendo Entertainment System. I keep my Mega Man merch on top of this game shelf my dad and I built a couple years ago. Below, it holds some of my most near and dear games like my NES collection and most of my original box games. My NES collection is my largest collection currently at 368 games. I have most of the games I want, but this year I was able to add 3 heavy hitters to my collection in Gargoyles Quest 2, The Creon Conquest, and Rockin' Cats. I was also able to find a decent amount of NES boxes this year, including Mega Man 2 and 4, as well as Kickle Cubicle, Little Nemo the Dream Master, and Battletoads. Remember Battletoads?
It's just video game review!
So, okay, last week Harley and I reviewed Ultra Enviroman. Whack to the curb. It has got to go. So today, we're gonna take a look at Battletoads. Rockin'! That it is, I mean, they got Psycho Pigs and Turbo Thwacking. And with kick fighting, surfing, babe saving, how can you go wrong? Your kid's a freak for Battletoads and these other games from Trade West. Nintendo Entertainment or Game Boy systems required.
I play my NES games on one of my favorite consoles, the AVS Retro USB, which is a custom FPGA board programmed to replicate the NES's original processor. There are no emulators or repurposed hardware, and it all displays in HD. If that isn't enough, there is a built-in Game Genie complete with stored codes. I don't even need this guy. For instance, here is Battletoads again. Let's go ahead and add infinite lives, super fast punching, the mega jump, and let's start on the 8th level. I'm probably going to need all that because if you've ever played Battletoads, you know it's going to be hard. I also started collecting Famicom games this year for fun. Famicom is the Japanese version of the NES and stands for Family Computer. You can also play these games on the Retro USB. Super Mario Bros. 3 is actually slightly different from the US version. I also picked up Mother, which is the first game in the Earthbound series. We never got this game in the US and I can't even decipher the language, but lucky for me, there is a digital version on the Wii U, and it was also released to the Switch Online subscription if you pay for that. Speaking of the Nintendo Switch, my collection has doubled since my last game room tour. I've had a lot of fun playing some of the Switch exclusives, but none more than Cruisin' Blast. This game brings the arcade racing style right to the palm of your hand. My girlfriend and I have had a blast, no pun intended, unlocking all the levels and vehicles the game has to offer. In addition to the cars, trucks, motorcycles, and ATVs, you can also be a UFO, Triceratops, Hammerhead Shark, and even a unicorn. Each level offers a different theme, and the race ends when the first person places. Cruisin' Blast is not quite Mario Kart, but if you are looking for a slight change of pace, this is the game you are looking for. Next to my Switch collection are my GameCube games. One of my favorite accessories for the GameCube is the Game Boy Player. If you have one, you know that it won't work without the Game Boy Player disc. I ordered a custom case off of eBay for a few bucks, so my Game Boy Player disc has a permanent home now. Here is my tiny DS and 3DS collection. The majority of my time on the 3DS was spent playing the Zelda games they released for the system. A Link Between Worlds was amazing, and I enjoyed playing the Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask in 3D, which is why you won't see them in my Nintendo 64 collection. I also don't have many Nintendo 64 games as I do not have a way to play them in HD. Most of my favorite games for the system I have complete in box, or CIB for all you nerds out there. On that same shelf is my Super Nintendo collection. There just isn't a great way to display these games. Here are some of my console favorites, but I can't tell you how many hours I sunk into the Street Fighter II series as a child. My mom surprised me with this game on my 12th birthday, and I remember wanting my birthday party to be over so I could go home and play it. That time in between, I just stared at that strange SNES box art. I was hooked as soon as I heard that Capcom jingle. I thought I was so cool when I learned how to do a Hadouken. I was that kid beating the adults in the arcade. Here's a picture of me mid-air getting Super Street Fighter II for my 14th birthday. Oh Lord. Look at those jorts and that braided belt. I beat the game with every character just to see the different endings. The music was so good, my old band Chilled Monkey Brains recorded a Street Fighter II medley titled Go Home and Be a Family Man, which is what Guile would say to his opponents when he would beat them. The track featured our friend Danny Bedrosian, who is the current keyboard player for George Clinton and the Parliament Funkadelic. The album was titled Apocalypse and featured artwork by artist Blake Armstrong. Blake added cameo appearances of Guile, Ken, and Ryu to the cover art. We had the entire band and crew dressed like Street Fighter for a Halloween show. I wore that Blanca cosplay to Dragon Con and was featured on Adam Savage from Mythbusters' website, Tested. Back to SNES games. I also have a few in box. This year, I picked up this cool lenticular box for the game Claymates. It mentions here something about Blaze processing, which I have never heard of. Was that Nintendo's answer to Sega's blast processing?
The Sega Genesis has blast processing. Super Nintendo doesn't. So what's blast processing do? And what if you don't have blast processing?
The Sega Genesis is one of my favorite systems to collect for. I try to get my games in their original case, however I do have a large amount of loose parts that I keep on this cassette tape rack along with my loose Famicom games. One of the loose games I picked up this year was Thunder Force 3. I am becoming increasingly interested in shoot-em-ups, or shmups as they are called today. I have heard nothing but good things about Thunder Force 3 and for the most part they are true. I'm not going to lie though, this game is extremely fast and brutally difficult. I am learning the ins and outs of this game as quickly as I am losing lives. My other Sega collections are rather minuscule in comparison. My Dreamcast collection is pretty small, but I do believe this console offered the best versions of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2. If I am wrong, change my mind. My Sega collections only get smaller from there. My Sega Game Gear collection is currently at 4 games. My Saturn library is tied with that, however 2 of those are imports. And finally, my Sega Master System options are slowly growing at 3 whole games. You've got to start somewhere, I suppose. My TurboGrafx 16 library would be bigger if the games weren't so darn expensive and hard to come by. Lucky for me, I have some real nice friends, and my buddy Johnny gifted me a Turbo EverDrive. This high-tech piece of technology lets me play just about any American or Japanese release for the system. Thanks, Johnny. Moving on to Microsoft. I definitely played the original Xbox more than my PlayStation 2. Here's a game that took up a lot of my time, and that's Def Jam Fight for New York. There was a time when EA was at the top, and this title is a prime example. This fighting game lets you select rappers, musicians, and models as characters. Among them, you can select Snoop Dogg, Method Man, Busta Rhymes, and even Carmen Electra. At the core, this is a wrestling game with 4 other fighting styles, including submission, kickboxing, street fighting, and martial arts. There's even a nod to the punk scene as Henry Rollins trains you in the gym and teaches you the different styles. Great controls and an even better soundtrack makes this one of my favorite wrestling games of all time. Over on the Xbox 360 is one of my favorite RPGs, and that is South Park: The Stick of Truth. This doesn't even feel like an RPG. It feels like you are controlling an episode of South Park. This is one of those games that is hard not to finish. It's rather short, and that may be a part of the charm, but if you are a fan of the TV show, I highly recommend The Stick of Truth. My Xbox collection ends at the 360 as I do not have an Xbox One, Series S, or Series X. I am mainly a PlayStation guy. I have a small library of Sony handheld games, and I am having fun looking back at the original PlayStation. This year I picked up a game called No One Can Stop Mr. Domino. I saw this on Metal Jesus' channel, and if you are watching me and don't know who Metal Jesus is, you are doing it wrong. He is one of the best in the YouTube video game scene. Check him out. In this game, you control Mr. or Mrs. Domino around a track, leaving a trail of dominoes behind you. As you lap around and knock the trail of dominoes over, you acquire points. This is certainly a hidden gem on the PS1. It's kind of addicting in a sense, and it reminds me of a toy set I had when I was younger called Domino Rally.
Introducing Domino Rally. Domino Rally. Get all 3 sets.
The PS2 came with some fun exclusives, especially the Kingdom Hearts series. The Final Fantasy and Disney mashup made its debut on the PS2 and has led to several follow-ups. The sequel came out in 2005, and 14 years later we finally got Kingdom Hearts 3. Sadly, I haven't even started it yet, but I do have a good reason to pick it up and start playing it. As I was making this video, they announced the release of Kingdom Hearts 4. Looks like I'll have some time because it could be released anywhere between 2023 and 2025. I found a cool Kingdom Hearts artifact while I was at my local flea market. I came across this replica of Sora's sword. I placed it above my window and it makes for some nice game room flair. There are a lot of titles I played on the PS3, but a ton of my time was spent playing NCAA Football. PlayStation 3 introduced us to the trophy system and man, I was hooked. It took me about 6 years to get this trophy and I must have played 200 plus games. The grind included me winning the Heisman Trophy with several winners, meaning a whole season with each. It started in 2012 with Barry Sanders, Eddie George, Marcus Allen, and Desmond Howard. I knocked out RG3 and Andre Ware in 2013. I came back to win it with Doug Flutie, Herschel Walker, Charlie Ward, go Knowles, and Carson Palmer, finally getting that Platinum Trophy in 2017. Most sports games come out every year, and that was the same with NCAA Football until 2014 when the game was ended due to licensing issues. It's because of this that these titles are sought after and rapidly rising in price. Finally, we have my PS4 collection. The PS4 has some great exclusives too. One I keep coming back to is Wild Guns Reloaded. This is a retro western shoot 'em up with a perspective that is not commonly used. It's set up like a light gun game such as Operation Wolf, however there is no gun, just a controller. This is a re-release as the original game came out for the Super Nintendo. I'm very glad they decided to remake it as I was looking to pick up a copy for the Super Nintendo and well, yeah, no. Extra levels, weapons, and 2 more characters were added to this remake, including a dog named Bullet who uses a flying robot to help him shoot. It's a bit far-fetched, pun intended, but my best friend Cash can get on board with that. My game room looks pretty nice, but you can't get the full effect without some classic video game music. I have created my own video game room music playlist on Spotify. I was sharing some of the tracks with some friends and they ended up adding the playlist to their library. That gave me the idea to share it with you guys. We are currently at 4 whole likes and I will leave a link to it in the description. Well, that about wraps it up for my 2022 game room tour. This has been my longest video to date, and if you've made it this far, thanks for sticking around. I have a good time revisiting some of these titles and stories and have a lot more where those came from. If you aren't subscribed yet, considering doing so as we make our way to 300 subs. My name is Quinn Noble, and if you keep watching them, I'll keep making them. Have a great day.